screen.
It just started. Hold on. Well, if you're seeing this, I'm probably dead.
Hey, good to see you, man. Hey, who's dead?
Charlie Kirk is dead. And in the time leading up to me recording this video, there have been so many different reactions from so many different people, some very incredible reactions, but I plan on talking about that at another time. But Charlie was shot dead at a Utah TPUSA Change My Mind event. It took me just a second to be able to get this video out, specifically because I wanted to bring together my thoughts and some different resources to make this video. I didn't want to just like throw out my thoughts on it. I think this requires a little bit more time to put together. So sorry for the wait and sorry that I've been gone for so long, but Charlie Kirk is gone. In the time that he had headed up TPUSA with his co-founder throughout 2013, TPUSA had gone from a kind of no-name, off-brand sort of conservative satellite to a pretty large organization that controlled $4 million all the way up until 2023, which is the last filing that I was able to find, that said that they had nearly $100 million in funding, and the rise of Trump played a massive role in Charlie Kirk and TPUSA and the trajectory of this country, not only of the country, but also of Kirk himself. And I want to talk about that now that he's gone. We've talked about him a lot on this channel, and we've just been taking it piece by piece as it's been going on, but never have we done like a really big dive into it. And now that he's gone, I feel like now's the time to do that. TPUSA started of something pretty rinky-dink. I mean, the organization was almost completely toppled over the diaper protest incident when the Kent State TPUSA chapter dressed up in diapers in a little playpen and started doodling on the floor barefoot with nothing on but a diaper and a shirt with a binky in their mouth. This actually almost destroyed the entire organization. It was horrific. Charlie had to distance himself from it. I think the Kent State chapter actually got disbanded. It was that bad. I actually think that a really crucial moment happened, and a lot of this happened for a lot of conservative groups in the country. You can trace what happened to Charlie and how he ended up in a casket today to 2016, 2020, and 2024 is what changed and morphed him into what I believe as an actually pretty moderate, middle of the road, normie conservative into a radicalized Christian nationalist state force that is connected and is a mouthpiece of not only the Republican Party, but also the Trump administration, that of people who he specifically called his friends. A lot of people say that he was one of the early supporters of Trump, and I'm going to be honest with you, he wasn't. I was going to say I have no clue why this is not something that people remember, but actually Breitbart, Fox News, and Charlie Kirk, as well as a bunch of other conservatives, have really buried the fact that many of them were not only not supportive of Trump, but like outwardly didn't like him and didn't want him to become a part of the party. Charlie before Trump was a much different person. We're going to be looking at some clips about that. He was a Ted Cruz supporter, if you can believe it. He really was, before Ted Cruz got shredded. But not only was he not a part of the Trump train, he specifically was cheering for the slowdown of the Trump train in March, his very own words. Now, he deleted this. Obviously, this is something that he deleted before he passed, but he didn't want people to remember the history that he had, which is not the Charlie that we know of today, the radicalized Charlie, because that is very contradictory to what he was known for when he really got popular.
How many people in this room knew that the Republican field that ran was the youngest and most diverse presidential field in American history? Does anyone actually ever say that? Ever say that? We had more candidates under the age of 50 run for president than any other time in American history. 4. There's been 4 Latinos ever to run for president. 2 of them were in this election cycle, Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. We had the first Indian American. We had one of the only women ever to run for president, and probably the most qualified woman ever to run for president of the United States, in Carly Fiorina, right? We had an unbelievably qualified African-American neurosurgeon who was heralded by the left until he said he was a conservative. They loved him until he actually started speaking truth. Then all of a sudden they threw him under the bus and they called him every single name. We had the most qualified field in the history of American presidential politics. We had more governors. We had more people under the age of 50. Scott Walker, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio. Rubio and Cruz are 44, 45. Bernie Sanders is like double that. I mean, come on. He's like enrolled for Medicare for like 15 years. Give me a break. And this guy's winning over young people. What we have to do, and I think it's been one of the biggest failures of this last cycle, is we could have went to the American people Despite all the craziness and the finger pointing, what I wish we would have done, it's still not too late, because we have the youngest Speaker of the House since 1868. We have the youngest sitting U.S. Senator in Tom Cotton. We have the youngest, most diverse party right now, and a movement that is greater than just one person, than one personality, and one individual that wants to make it all about themselves. And so my charge to you today is make the movement younger, make it more diverse. And that is what our organization focuses on every single day.
If you're picking up on it, he was taking some shots at Trump there, actually, about making the movement all about just one person and being younger. Two things that Donald Trump is absolutely not. He is now the oldest president to be elected president in American history. And he's literally made all of the party about himself. And Charlie loves it now, but he hated it before. Charlie, before he got a taste of power, before he got a real taste of the money, before he got a real glimpse of how corrupting power and money can possibly be, Charlie was a completely different person. He went from youngest, diverse, ground level sort of conservative who would take shots at Donald Trump and care deeply about constitutionality to somebody who goes on screeds about migrants being your overlords and the Haitians taking over the country.
And pray Trump wins, or else things are going to get really bad. They're going to get even worse. There will be hundreds of thousands of Haitians brought into Alabama, and they will become your masters.
Hundreds of thousands of Haitians brought into Alabama and become your masters. Don't you think that's going to say something to people? They're going to think like, hey, man, maybe I should do something about this. We're leading up into the idea that Charlie was calling. We're leading up into the idea of, don't you think that puts something in somebody's head? The idea that migrants aren't here for a better life or are just people just like us, but they're going to become our masters. They're going to destroy us, take over us. Whatever happened to all that talk about diversity, equity, even inclusion? The Charlie Kirk of before is the Charlie Kirk before he died. Would be somebody who he would call a rhino. He would want kicked out of the party. It's not somebody who he would even recognize, and as somebody who he even tried to destroy by destroying many of his past writings before Trump came along, and destroying many of the videos that he had of himself talking about Trump. Something happened to Charlie. Something really bad happened to Charlie. And it started with Trump, but it continued with COVID. When C-19 started to take off, and when people really started to understand that this is something dangerous, instead of Charlie understanding that, hey, maybe I should turn down the rhetoric. Maybe I should understand that this is a virus that even killed my co-founder. Not even the death of Bill Montgomery, the co-founder of TPUSA, could change his mind, because Charlie, even after the death of this man, his own co-founder, the person who he worked with for years, died, he still became a COVID denialist. He debated Vosh about COVID denialism on Tim Pool's podcast. He did so many videos about how the government is going to now take over our rights and liberties, and we need to fight back. We need to attack the government. We need to attack the government, and even considering social distancing and asking for documentation of vaccination to make sure that you aren't a plague rat and carrier of something that could kill people's clientele. Instead, he decided to compare those things that could have possibly saved his own friend for years that he became a millionaire with, that he rose to power with. He decided to call these even smallest. I'm not even talking about the large like shutdowns that we were even seeing across the world in places like the UK and other parts of Europe. We had no real shutdowns here. The government can't stop you from leaving your house like they can in many other countries. We had no real shutdowns. It was just guidance and other companies being like, hey, maybe you should stand a little further away from each other. And most people didn't even follow that. But instead of thinking, hey, maybe I should care about my friends, hey, maybe I should care about my family, hey, maybe I should have cared about my co-founder and my audience and tell them that they should really be taking this incredibly seriously. Instead, he decided to fearmonger and demagogue about it and say that even the smallest amount of protections that we had for each other, as a million Americans were dying and gasping for breaths, as like hospitals were filling up across the country with dead bodies, as we were running out of ventilators in the mismanagement of Trump's COVID response. This was his response to that.
And the media says, Charlie likens being asked for vaccine papers to the Nazi regime. Like, yeah, of course I'm likening it to it. This is insane. Of course, that was worse, but this is the same sort of pattern, trajectory of tyranny that we saw in previous totalitarian governments. By the way, East Germany is...
Here's another video of how much Charlie Kirk changed.
What happened is that Christian conservatives fell for a trap that they really should have rejected, which is we might hold these truths very near and dear to our heart, theologically and biblically and spiritually and religiously. But I think where the line was crossed is in the 60s and 70s and 80s, where we tried to impose those beliefs through government policy, where people then inherently have a rejection to it. Similarly, how people are rejecting the left, imposing their crazy worldview upon us, right? I think that was a big mistake because it created this kind of counter-revolution, which is, I don't want to have to live the way some Christian in Alabama wants me to live. Does that make sense? So it's the imposition of those values through legislation and government, which is something I don't necessarily support, right? So I try to always advocate for every one of my political positions through a secular worldview, because that is the vast majority of people, and that's the government system that we have all decided to create. We do have a separation of church and state, and we should support that. And there is no separation of church and state. It's a fabrication. It's a fiction. It's not in the Constitution. It's made up by secular humanists. It's derived from a single letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury Baptist Convention. Of course, we should have church and state mixed together. Our founding fathers believed in that. We can go through the details of that. They established literally a church in Congress. Anyways.
Conspiracy and radicalism took over this person's brain in a way that I think has very rarely been documented, but Charlie radicalized horribly. And I think this part came specifically during COVID, where COVID conspiracy theories became rampant. And this is something that I don't think we talk about too often, but and I want to make a video about this sometime in the future, but COVID broke a lot of people's brains. It broke a lot of people's brains. And the money, along with the conspiracy, along with other people kind of jumping into this idea that the government is out to get us and the government is trying to destroy us, when here in the country, once again, we had no real lockdowns. Some companies stopped allowing large gatherings, but you could still have people over to your home. That wasn't illegal. People were doing things voluntarily, and they stopped doing it way earlier than they should have. And a lot of people got their vaccines, but in that time, when you open your mind up to these type of conspiracy theories and these types of half-truths and falsified information, this is where the evil creeps in. Because once you start to believe one thing, the people who spread this type of information for fame, for clout, for money, for views, for clicks, they spread other things that you can start to hop from one to another. Well, the government's trying to stop us from, let's say, going to church. Well, maybe they're stopping us from going to church because they want all the masses to be pagan, dildo fucking trans femboys or something. It's real. It's real. People really believe that. Don't laugh. It's not funny. It's very scary. Sissy hypno is very real and very scary. But when that happens, radicalization can take hold. And this is what happened to a lot of people when it came to QAnon. And I want to talk about this in the future. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about in the future. I've been gone for a while. But I want to talk about this in the future again. But QAnon specifically was formed out of this idea that Donald Trump was some great savior, and he was playing 4D chess constantly, and he was way smarter than he was letting on, and he was going to take out the deep state when he is the deep state. He is a billionaire who was helping control politics away from and wrestle it away from working class people. The only difference is he was the guy pulling the strings, and all the people who we hate on are the people who are getting their strings pulled. But now that the curtain is pulled back, we start to think that this guy is honest when he's just in it the same way other people are, but he just happens to have more money than others do. Obviously, this led to a lot of people who start acting like that as well, because once you start mixing in things like deadly weapons, like guns, now people start thinking that this little problem solver, that a lot of gun people like to call it, will actually solve their problems, which is things like heretics and people in the deep state starting to try to take away their religion, when they're actually just opening up avenues for other people to express themselves and their religion in this country. And because that's what the country was actually for. And after this started to happen around 2020, 2022, and after the riot at the Capitol to overthrow the government and Joe Biden and in the Joe Biden administration's complete failure to hold many of the people who committed these crimes account, especially Donald Trump, who needed to be in jail the same way Jair Bolsonaro is in jail right now or going to jail. When that happened, now conservatives started to believe that they have near impunity when it comes to how they act and things that they say. And they believe that the deep state stopped them from finally reaching their theocratic near kingship that they wanted to elevate Trump to in 2020. And this is where things started to pick up for Charlie as well, because he was swept up in this. A lot of the conservative ideology runs in its own little imaginary bubble. But the problem is we can do this a lot in between election cycles. You can think whatever you want. Reality rubs against their bubble and something breaks, and Charlie broke. And in 2023, he started to become far more violent and far more unempathetic and far more dangerous of a person. I was going to say in my personal opinion, but factually, accurately, he became a much more dangerous individual. The video on this isn't really here anymore, like the audio, like the visual version of it, but the audio is still here, and you can check the link. He absolutely said this. I believe it's still even on his Rumble. He even started to call for the death of Joe Biden nearing the end of the 2024 election cycle.
A lot. I mean, Joe Biden is a bumbling, dementia-filled Alzheimer's, corrupt tyrant who should honestly be put in prison and or given the death penalty for his crimes against America.
They're going to put you on a leash, and they're going to start walking white boys down the street of Chattanooga, Tennessee, like pets. 6'13", black as night Haitians walking their little white boys on leashes, giving them vapes as treats. It's horrific, a horrific world that Charlie Kirk was begging for us not to be in. But he worked hard in 2024 to get Trump elected, and he got exactly what he wanted. And then at the end, when he's gone, this is how Trump reacts to his death.
How are you holding up over the last 3.5 years? I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks. They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House.
Very good. I'm handling this all very well. Charlie, body is barely cold. His body's still warm. I'm handling this very well after pretending to act like he was so torn up about Charlie's death. Trump doesn't care about anybody. Charlie Kirk was assassinated on stream in front of his supporters. Trump probably watched it happen after Trump was probably rushed an iPad and shown it happening live, and he still could barely care. This is the man that Charlie Kirk risked his life for. If I'm going to be honest, this is the man that Charlie Kirk died for. I obviously don't support political violence, but Charlie is somebody who thought it was a little bit more funny than maybe the rest of us do. This was his comments when Nancy Pelosi's husband was attacked and almost killed by a hammer-wielding maniac who broke into their San Francisco home. Take a look at this.
Why is the Republican Party, why is the conservative movement to blame for gay schizophrenic nudists that are hemp jewelry makers breaking into somebody's home, or maybe not break?
I'm sorry, just in case you didn't understand, just in case you don't speak conservanese, what he's referring to are a bunch of different conspiracy theories about the person who tried to murder Nancy Pelosi and her husband. Nancy Pelosi was not in the San Francisco home at the time. Her husband was, though. She was in DC, and the man was actually looking for her, found him, and tried to kill him with a hammer. He was stopped by police. And her husband was able to fight back. All of these are random Twitter conservative extremist ramblings about how they want to justify how this man was almost killed. And since he wasn't, we can have a little bit more fun with it.
Breaking into somebody's home. Why are we to blame for that exactly? And why is he still in jail? Why has he not been bailed out? By the way, if some amazing patriot out there in San Francisco or the Bay Area wants to really be a midterm hero, someone should go and bail this guy out. I bet his bail's like $30,000 or $40,000. Bail him out and then go ask him some questions.
A little smile. Oh, dude, it's so funny. Dude, it's political violence. It's so funny, dude. Almost bludgeoning a man to death because he's married to the Speaker of the House. Dude, this shit is, that's a real knee slapper. His bail was not $30,000. He was actually sentenced to life in jail without parole for attempted murder and political violence and terrorism. Not that funny. Another example, him calling for the death of migrants who are crossing the border too.
Not only should these people be deported, you need real deterrence. There is the castle doctrine in this country. The castle doctrine is that you're allowed to defend your home if it's being invaded, if it's being intruded upon, if it's being burglarized. Why can't you defend your country if it's being burglarized? These people are burglars, robbers, thieves, and criminals. They're effective squatters in the country, and we call them migrants. Stop using that term. This will not stop. And they laugh at us. You see that? They're kind of like rejoicing. They know we're never going to use force. The word is out in the insane asylums, in the prisons, in the gang communities. America is open. The greatest country ever to exist. They won't arrest you. They won't deter you. They won't deport you. They'll give you free stuff. And if you impregnate a woman, that child becomes a U.S. citizen because that's birthright citizenship. They are gaming every single rule, regulation, and custom and using it against us. And they are laughing about it. You got videos of illegal Venezuelans saying, hey, we're going to take over homes and sit as squatters in the major metropolitan areas.
Castle doctrine. The same doctrine, that's the same law that's used to instantly shoot anybody who walks into your house if you believe them to be a robber or committing some crime inside of your home. This is him actively calling for just gunning down people who cross the border. Mind you, you can only seek asylum in this country if you're on American soil. You can't seek asylum in the US from Mexico. There's no real way to be able to do that. There's no real way to be able to do that. You can ask, but you need to be brought onto US soil to be able to do that. You need to be able to cross the border to be able to get there. And once again, most of the people who are in this country illegally are people who just overstayed their visas. That's the vast majority of people who are in this country. They're not people trying to steal anything. There's a reason why migrants in this country have a lower crime rate than natural born citizens. And once you become naturally born, your crime rate usually it goes up until it reaches the average American's crime rate, which we love ourselves a saucy little crime in this country. But your average migrant, no. And the people crossing that border, once again, more likely than not, are seeking asylum. And if they're not, it's not like we're just letting them run around. These people are documented and captured and then either sent back, held, or released. Because crossing the border and the crime for crossing the border is not the death sentence. The only time when your life is actually forfeit is when you are threatening the life of another person. There is almost no other way to possibly get out of that situation outside of using lethal force. Charlie, on the other hand, didn't think so. Not only did he think that that's wrong, a wrong way to think of how lives should be valued in this country, he believed they have this doomsday sacrificial idea when it comes to how human beings are treated, and that we just need to feed humans to the grinder. But I wanted to talk about something, and it would be horrible if I finished this without talking about this, because this is the most important piece of the puzzle, which is how Charlie died. Gun violence. Charlie Kirk is just one of the 80,000 people who have died by gun violence in this country. At the same day, the same exact day that Charlie Kirk was shot and killed at his event in Utah, there was a school shooting. There was a school shooting where multiple children were killed, only in a state away in Colorado. Got way less news and coverage than Charlie Kirk's death, for obvious reasons that we'll talk about here in a moment. But Charlie had a very interesting take on school shootings and these shootings in general that exemplifies the sacrificial nature that I talk about when it comes to how conservatives view how they want the country to actually run. And this is the clip. You may have seen it before. I want to talk a little bit more in depth about it.
Now, we must also be real. We must be honest with the population. Having an armed citizenry comes with a price. Wow. And that is part of liberty.
Wow.
Driving comes with a price. 50,000 people die on the road every year. Wow. That's a price. You get rid of driving, you'd have 50,000 less auto fatalities. But we have decided that the benefit of driving, speed, accessibility, mobility, having products, services, is worth the cost of 50,000 people dying on the road. Wow. So we need to be very clear that you're not going to get gun deaths to zero. It will not happen. Right. You can significantly reduce them through having more fathers in the home, yes, by having more armed guards in front of schools. Yes. Yes. We should have an honest and clear reductionist view of gun violence But we should not have a utopian one. You will never live in a society when you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. Nobody talks like this. They live in a complete alternate universe. So then how do you reduce? Very simple. People say, oh, Charlie, how do you stop school shootings? I don't know. How did we stop shootings at baseball games? Because we have armed guards outside of baseball games. That's why. How do we stop all the shootings at airports? We have armed guards outside of airports. How do we stop all the shootings at banks? We have armed guards outside of banks.
Now, it's important to understand this is fundamental to the modern conservatives' view of gun deaths and death in this country to begin with. It's sacrificial. Something needs to be given to be able to have something. This whole idea of freedom isn't free. This is how they think of it. This is actually something that I would agree with. Remember how I said I would agree with the old Charlie? I actually agreed with this Charlie, not in the sense of, not in the way that he would want, though. I agree that not many people in this country are willing to bite the bullet on what their views and how those would be enacted are actually going to come about. Politics isn't just about like having little nerdy discussions. Politics is about power and how to affect people's lives, how to control them or end them. That's what politics is actually about. And that's why I get so angry when people talk about, oh man, it's just politics. We're just talking, man. We're not just talking. This isn't funny. This is life and death. That's the point here. He is dead because of his politics. He is dead because of political violence. Children don't have a father and a wife doesn't have a husband anymore. And a lot of other people are crying like they don't have a husband anymore too. Life and death. This is important, especially when it comes to weapons specifically made to bring about that death. Not many people are willing to bite the bullet on that. And I respected him for this take specifically because he understands one thing, which is that you have to be at least logically consistent on something in your life. He has flip-flopped throughout his entire, admittedly, very short life. But one thing that he stood on, which was that people need to die to be able to have the amount of guns that we have in this country, which is true. That is not something that you can argue with. It is a very logical position and a morally consistent one. A moral one is something we're going to talk about here in a moment, but it is a morally consistent worldview to have. And so what happened here in Utah was the consequences of his own worldview and actions. The grinder needs meat. The river that leads to the altar of the gun needs blood. And that's how you pay for it. Out of everything that we talked about here, he at least understood that someone has to die. It just happened to be that it was him who had to die that day. He'd be one of the 80,000 people this year, only this year, whose lives were ended due to gun violence because we not only decided not to stop it, but because we chose to sacrifice their lives to the altar of the gun, to chew up everything that they had and could have had, specifically so we could have more guns in this country and more guns than we have people in this country. We wonder how we can get more people into this country. We don't want to import them. And we don't want to have them because our birth rate is getting so low, but we sure as hell are perfectly fine killing them. Young ones too. School shootings to Charlie Kirk was just an inevitable outcome. He tried to sauce it up at the end and try to make it nice by, oh, well, I mean, we can stop some of these other shootings. We can't. We can't stop any of these other shootings. He worked his entire life to ensure that we can't stop any of these other shootings because of how lax gun laws are in this country. And it didn't even used to be like this. It didn't even used to be like this in many of these deep red states that have incredibly lax gun laws and now wildly out of control violence that nobody can get a handle of because guns are so efficient at ending life. That is the point of them, to efficiently end life as quickly and as efficiently as possible. Charlie Kirk's life, 31 years of human existence erased in an instant because somebody had access, some crazy person had access to a roof and this tiny piece of lead a couple 100 meters away from him. And that was worth it to Charlie. So he now flows down the river to have his soul eaten by the altar of the gun, because that's who he really prayed to. Not the God of Abraham, but the altar of the gun. And we all must be sacrificed in Charlie Kirk's worldview. Those children in that same school shooting are in the same boat with him. Their blood rolled into that river as well to help feed the monster that we created in this country. Nowhere else in the world are there shootings like there are in this country. And he even brought up places like Israel where, they have so few problems. Israel, a country actively committing genocide because of all of the violence and depravity that they have in that country. There's a 19-year-old having a date with an with an AK-47. Our 19-year-olds have dates with AR-15s. Across the world, they have dates with AK-47s. I think they're cuter personally, but that's just me. And he just said that like that's a normal thing it's a normal human thought process. That's how divorced from humanity that many of these people are. That's not a normal thing to say. He just said that like, they solved this problem. They have the problem and they mask it with more guns. More guns equals more problems. You can't sit here and genuinely believe, and I can't ask him the question anymore, but you can't sit here and genuinely believe that countries where people feel like they need to bring a military grade weaponry to be able to fetch a pitch of water are countries that you want to live in. They're not. There's a reason why people move away from the places that have the highest gun violence. If just having more guns would equal better, if having more guns would equal better outcomes, then all the places that have higher gun violence should be way better because they have more guns. You can pick up a gun if you want. They're $200 at Walmart, at Wally World. That's the same price of a cable subscription. And honestly, these days may be cheaper. So I'm not going to talk about who deserves and doesn't deserve to die. I didn't want Charlie Kirk to die. I wanted him to stop. I wanted him to stop what he was doing. I wanted him to stop trying to radicalize people into his theocratic, sacrificial, end of doomsday worldview about this country that is sending us into a spiral after he helped elect the type of president that the CIA would install in a foreign nation to destabilize it. And now we have flags at half-mast for this man who wants to sacrifice us all. Everyone is up on the chopping block. Your life could be ended at any point in time because of the work that Charlie Kirk did in this country to help make gun violence a near infinite threat to anyone at any point in time. You are never safe anywhere, not in your home, not in your sleep, not on the way to work, not at your job, not at your friend's house. Nowhere ever are you safe from gun violence. It can and will come and find you at some point, no matter where you are. Whether it's closer or further away is another question though. And I pray for all of you that is permanently further away from you, but it will never be far enough for you to feel truly safe. Think about it, how now many of us go to places like Walmart and these public open spaces and now think, I want to make sure that I know where an exit is just in case some crazy person with an AR with slurs written on it doesn't come in and think that they need to enact their justice against the world because he can't get a girlfriend. Charlie Kirk's worldview was fueled by death after his radicalization. Whether or not that's sacrificing people to the altar of the gun and gun violence, or whether or not it's asking for the execution of his political opponents, I don't feel bad for Charlie Kirk because he got what he wanted. He was able to bring about massive change in this country that's going to exist for the rest of my life. And he brought about the world that he wanted in his short time in life. Whether or not he would have been okay with being sacrificed when it comes down to it, I don't know, but death comes for us all. And many times it's very cruel and very sudden. But he made it very clear through his life's work that some people need to die for his worldview to exist in the way that it is. Many people are happy making that judgment call when their lives aren't the ones on the line. Would he still be as happy if he knew years ago, before Trump got into office, that in 10 years time, in less than 10 years time, he would no longer be with us? Would he still have the same views that he did today? I can't tell you. He didn't have that option. None of us have this option. None of us had the option to be sacrificed for his worldview. But all of us now need to bear the brunt of the world that he brought about, and the world that he doesn't have to deal with anymore. Charlie is gone, but the work that we have to do as people who care about life, who care about how life brings life, and how the conservatives' radicalization is death that brings more death, have to do is work harder and work longer and love life more than these people love death. Charlie got what he asked for, a sacrifice to be able to have more guns. He lived like a capitalist every single day, having a net worth of near $12 million. I'm not going to answer the question whether or not he deserved to live or die. I didn't want him to go to that college because I didn't want him to be talking and trying to radicalize people at those colleges. I didn't want him to get as popular and be targeted by somebody because I wanted him to live just a normal life. Maybe if he went to college and got a normal job, he would still be here with us today. I don't know. But what I do know is that we are left picking up the mess that he left us. And there's so much more to do. So congrats, Charlie. I hope you can rest easy knowing what you did to this country.